Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're focusing on a really critical issue, truly existential for a nation. The water crisis hitting Pakistan. It's stark. Pakistan is ranked among the top 10 most water-stressed countries globally.
Yeah, and the speed at which this has happened is quite alarming when you look at the numbers. Back in, 1951, Pakistan actually had plenty of water, around 5,000 cubic meters of fresh water available per person.
5,000, okay.
But by 2015, that figure had plummeted, crashed down to just 1,100 cubic meters. And that really pushes them way past the official water-stressed threshold.
That drop is just staggering. And what jumps out from the research we're looking at today is where that pressure is coming from. You might think population, but this study points overwhelmingly towards their economy, specifically agriculture.
Oh, absolutely. It's a dominant factor. Think about this. Back in 2008, a massive 94% of all the water Pakistan withdrew was purely for farming.
94%. Wow.
It leads to this incredible statistic. Pakistan apparently has the world's most water-intensive economy. It takes something like 38 cubic meters of water just to generate $1 single US dollar of GDP. They're essentially trying to grow their economy using a resource that's just vanishing.
So a huge resource gap driven by, well, really inefficient water use. Our mission today is to unpack the roadmap laid out in this specific research paper titled Irrigation Efficiency and Renewable Energy-Powered Desalination as Key Components of Pakistan's Water Management Strategy. How do they actually propose fixing this?
Well, the starting point has to be the current irrigation setup. The study highlights that basically 100% of irrigated land in Pakistan relies on these old, often poorly maintained surface irrigation systems, basically flooding the field.
Right, a traditional way.
Exactly. And the average efficiency, it's estimated at a pretty dismal 40%.
40, so 60% is just lost.
Lost, wasted, evaporation, seepage, before the crops even get a chance to use it.
Okay, with efficiency that low, you absolutely have to start there.
Yeah.
So how did this study actually model the potential impact of fixing that inefficiency?
They looked forward, projecting out to 2050, and developed 3 different scenarios or pathways focused specifically on irrigation efficiency improvements.
Okay, what are they?
So first, there's the base scenario. This is basically business as usual, assumes no significant policy shifts, so no real improvement in efficiency.
Just keep doing what they're doing.
Pretty much. Then second, they have the IEP scenario. That's the irrigation efficiency push. This one models a sort of moderate, steady improvement, like a maximum 1% gain in efficiency each year.
Okay, gradual progress.
And then the third one, this is the big one, the HPIE scenario, highest possible irrigation efficiency. This imagines a really transformative shift, getting to 90% efficiency everywhere by 2050.
90%? How?
Through widespread adoption of modern tech, like pressurized drip irrigation systems, the kind of thing you see in places like Israel or parts of North America, very advanced agriculture.
Right. So let's put those side by side. What's the difference in outcome between hitting that ambitious 90% target, the HPIE, versus just staying on the current base path by 2050? The impact must be enormous.
It's fundamentally different. It's the difference between having a chance and facing depletion. If Pakistan achieves that HPIE scenario, the study projects a 54% reduction in total national water demand compared to the base scenario by 2050.
54% less water needed overall.
Exactly. And here's a huge point for infrastructure planning. The projected need for new, expensive desalination plants drops by an incredible 80%.
80% less desalination. That's massive. So why is that 54% total demand reduction so crucial for sustainability? It sounds like it saves money, obviously, but there's more to it.
Definitely. It connects directly to Pakistan's natural water budget, you could say. The study estimates their annual renewable water resources. The amount they can sustainably use each year is about 246 billion cubic meters.
Okay, 246 billion is the sustainable limit.
Right. Now, the base scenario doing nothing projects that by 2050, the annual demand would soar to 427 billion cubic meters.
Whoa, wait. 427 billion demand versus a 246 billion supply? That's nearly double.
It's completely unsustainable. They'd be draining their resources far, far faster than nature replenishes them. Now, contrast that with the HPIE scenario, the high-efficiency one.
Right.
Under HPIE, the projected demand by 2050 is 197 billion cubic meters.
197 billion. That's below the 246 billion limit.
Exactly. It's the only scenario modeled where demand stays safely within the renewable resource means. So without that big push on irrigation efficiency, the basic math for water security just doesn't add up.
And that huge difference in overall demand must explain why the need for desalination dropped so much. especially in certain areas.
Precisely. You see the biggest reduction in desalination demand, and therefore the biggest relief from water stress in those heavily irrigated agricultural regions like Sindh and Punjab. In the base case, they account for like 60% of the desalination needed, but in the HPIE case, that drops down closer to 50%, even though the total desalination need is much, much smaller.
Okay, so efficiency is absolutely step one, the foundation. But even achieving 90% efficiency, they're still going to need significant new water supplies, right? Especially for cities and industry. That brings us back to desalination. How does the study suggest powering all that? Because desalination is famously energy hungry.
It is, and that brings us to the second key pillar of the strategy presented in this study, shifting towards 100% renewable energy to power that desalination. The analysis actually shows that the projected growth in desalination demand across all the scenarios, even the high-demand ones, can be met entirely by renewables by 2050.
Entirely by renewables, what kind?
Primarily, it's looking at solar photovoltaics, solar PV, combined with battery storage for grid stability and nighttime operation.
Okay, solar PV and batteries, what kind of scale are we talking about?
Well, to give you an idea, even in that moderate IEP scenario, the study estimates they'd need about 468 gigawatts of solar PV capacity installed by 2050. That alone would generate something like 99% of the electricity needed for the desalination sector.
468 gigawatts just for desalination power, that's a huge build-out. What makes them think this is feasible, especially cost-wise?
It's driven by the falling costs of the key technologies. Two things mainly. First, the cost of the desalination plants themselves, specifically seawater reverse osmosis, or SWRO plants.
SWRO.
Their capital costs are expected to keep dropping significantly. The study uses what's called a learning rate of 15%.
A 15% learning rate. Can you break that down? What does that mean practically?
Sure. It basically means that every time the total amount of SWRO capacity installed worldwide doubles, the cost to build the next plant drops by about 15%. It's a well-observed trend in technology costs. The more you build, the cheaper it gets to build more.
Okay, so the desalination tech itself gets cheaper over time. What about the power cost?
That's the second major driver. The cost of electricity from renewables, especially solar, is also plummeting. The study uses a metric called the levelized cost of electricity, or LCOE. It's essentially the average price per unit of energy the plant needs to sell at to cover all its costs over its lifetime.
Right, the LCOE.
The projection is that the LCOE for the renewable power system supplying desalination drops from around $80 per megawatt hour back in 2020 down to maybe $40 per megawatt hour by 2050.
Wow, half the cost for the electricity.
Yeah, a massive reduction. And when electricity is a huge part of desalination's operating cost, cutting that in half makes the whole proposition much more affordable.
Okay, so cheaper plants, cheaper power. But what about the final price tag for the water itself, delivered to the user, maybe even the farmer? That's the critical number, surely. What's the projected levelized cost of water, the LCOW?
Good question. The LCOW, which includes everything building the plant, the energy, operating it, and transporting the water, is projected to land somewhere around 60 cents per cubic meter by 2050. And that's pretty consistent across the different scenarios.
60 cents per cubic meter. Now, we need to put that in context. The study mentions the current price farmers pay for irrigation water is heavily subsidized, right? Something incredibly low.
Yeah, it's cited at about $0.013 US per cubic meter. Just over 1 cent.
Okay, so going from roughly 1 cent to 60 cents, that's a monumental jump. That feels like a huge political and economic hurdle if farmers are expected to bear that cost.
It absolutely is a major policy challenge, no question. But the study frames that $$ LCOW as potentially becoming an attractive water cost in the future.
Attractive? How so?
Well, two reasons. First, the cost of getting traditional water sources is going up. You have to drill deeper for groundwater. Surface water is more contested and polluted. Treatment costs rise. Second, and more fundamentally, what's the cost of not having water? It's crop failure, economic damage. So sort of all 6 cents might seem high now, but compared to the rising cost of alternatives or the cost of scarcity itself, it starts to look more viable, perhaps necessary.
That makes sense. Scarcity has its own much higher cost. And you mentioned transportation is included in that $1.06.
Yes, and that's a significant part. The cost of the pipelines and pumping needed to get desalinated water from the coast inland to where it's needed, particularly for agriculture, could account for up to half, 50% of that final 60-cent cost per cubic meter. Infrastructure is key.
Okay, so we tie these two main threads together, boosting irrigation efficiency and powering new desalination with renewables. It sounds like they're not just separate solutions, but they work together.
Absolutely. That's the core message, really. The synergy is crucial. Pushing hard on irrigation efficiency, getting to that HPIE scenario, dramatically reduces the sheer volume of desalination you need in the first place.
Right, that 80% drop we talked about.
Exactly. And because you need so much less desalination capacity, you therefore need much less investment in the renewable energy infrastructure. The solar farms, the batteries, the grid upgrades to power it. Efficiency acts like a gateway. It makes the necessary water augmentation through desalination far more financially manageable.
Can we actually put a number on those savings? How much capital investment does prioritizing efficiency save?
The study quantifies it, and the numbers are really substantial. Looking at the total cumulative capital spending needed for the entire water system, including desalination and its power supply, out to 2050.
Okay.
The investment required in the HPIE scenario, high efficiency one, is estimated to be 70% to 80% less than what would be needed in the base scenario or even the moderate IEP scenario.
70 to 80% cheaper overall system cost just by maximizing efficiency first.
That's the finding. It translates to potentially hundreds of billions of dollars in avoided infrastructure costs for Pakistan. It shows efficiency isn't just about saving water, it's about massive capital savings too.
And there's another benefit tucked away in here related to the energy transition itself, right? Something that also helps water security.
Yes, a really important co-benefit. As Pakistan transitions its broader power grid towards renewables, moving away from traditional thermal power plants, coal, gas, even nuclear, which use enormous amounts of fresh water for cooling.
Right, those cooling towers you see.
Exactly. That shift means the power sector's own demand for fresh water is projected to plummet. The study estimates a reduction of about 95% in the power sector's water withdrawals by 2050 due to the renewable transition.
Wow. So by solving the energy piece sustainably, they simultaneously free up a huge amount of existing fresh water that was previously used just for generating electricity.
Precisely. It's another way the energy and water challenges are linked, and how solving one helps the other.
So wrapping this up, it really feels like this study provides a concrete, technically sound, and seemingly cost-optimized path forward for Pakistan. It shows how they could achieve water security by following through on the kinds of goals they've already outlined in their own national water policy from 2018.
It does lay out a plausible technical and economic pathway, but, it also implicitly raises a critical question. What if they don't manage to make this efficiency shift happen? The solutions are there on paper, but what are the consequences of inaction or insufficient action?
That's the looming question, isn't it? The study itself mentions findings from other external modeling work. What did that suggest might happen if things like groundwater extraction aren't managed and efficiency stays low?
Yeah, it cites some agricultural adaptation modeling, which painted a pretty stark picture. It suggested that without serious constraints on groundwater pumping and without major improvements in water management, Pakistan could face a scenario where production of a vital staple crop like wheat might effectively cease within the country by the middle of this century.
Cease entirely. Where would it go?
The modeling suggested production could shift to other global regions that still have, quote, cheap and abundant groundwater resources. It essentially ties Pakistan's future food security directly to the policy choices they make now about water efficiency and resource management.
A stark reminder of the incredibly high stakes involved. Making these technical solutions a reality is not just about infrastructure, it's about national survival and stability.
It really underscores the urgency.
Well, thank you for breaking down this crucial research. It's been a fascinating look at the potential pathways. And for our listeners, all the insights today came from the detailed analysis presented in the paper. Irrigation efficiency and renewable energy-powered desalination as key components of Pakistan's water management strategy. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.